that are there. What he did was he raised that 4% to 24%, and he had it kick in at 24,000. And they created an incredible number of rates there as well. But let's look at the other minimum rates. Now, when Eisenhower started in 1953, the rate had gone down slightly to 22%, and they had dropped the starting rate for that down to 17,000. At the end of his administration, 1961, the rate was about the same, but they had increased it a little bit in terms of where that rate was going to kick in. You had to get to 30.7 thousand before that 20% rate came in. Now, when Reagan started in 1981, there was a 0% tax rate until you got to $8,000 a year. And then when he ended, that rate was 15%, but they raised the level up to 57%. So even though he raised the rate for people who are making less than $8,000, it had a huge effect on the middle class. We'll take a look at that again. But let's first look at the maximum rates, because that's the 90% rate that he was talking about. When FDR started in 1933, the maximum rate was 63%, and you had to have an income of $17.5 million to get 63%. But at the end, in 1945, FDR had raised the rates to 94%, and he had lowered it to $2.5 million. Still pretty high income rate. That essentially stayed with Eisenhower. It was 92% when he began and 91% when it ended. And again, they raised that bracket a little bit from 1.7 million to 3 million. When Reagan began, it was a 70% tax racket at the beginning of $500,000, okay? Now, they lowered that to 28% for everybody making $57,000 and above. Understand that when you look at these brackets, and this is what we need to understand, FDR went from 55 brackets when he took office to 24, and he raised taxes considerably, especially at the higher end. Eisenhower kept those same 24 brackets and had about the same distribution in terms of tax rates. Reagan, however, had 16 brackets when he took office, and when he finished, he had 2 brackets. If you made less than $57,000, you had a 15% tax bracket. If you made more than $57,000, you had a 28% tax bracket. A huge decrease in taxes, and we can see this if we look at the median family tax rate. Look at what the median family is making, and again, this is in current dollars, $51.9 thousand. Under FDR, he taxed the families. There was 4% when he came in, but he raised it to 29%. Good socialist, isn't he? Reagan dropped them from 28% to 15% for the median family income. The socialist raises it from 4 to 29%. That's what they do for you. When we come back, we're going to talk about what real socialism looks like. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This is an American president. Just add puppet, then vote and repeat every 4 years.
Shane Steiner's involvement with InfoWarsLife.com truly happened in an organic way. I went to high school with Shane, his brother, knew his parents well, and he was visiting the office once, hadn't been to the office in years, and said, wow, I notice you're making and selling supplements. Do these really work? Because I've tried a lot of supplements as a workout enthusiast, and I really think most of them are hype. And I said, here, take some home, try it. Well, a few weeks later, he came in blown away and said, I want to buy 3 boxes of this stuff to give my friends and family. It's simply amazing. He said, why does it work so well? And I said, listen, go to InfoWarsLife.com, watch the informational videos with Dr. Group and others. They understand how it all works. I know that it works for me. That's all I understand. The science, the facts, the research, people's testimonials, they're all on InfoWarsLife.com. You can check it out for yourself.
I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to push myself and work out harder, and that led to me being able to come out and do stuff like the barefooting and the surfing and stuff like that, which I've never done. I never would have done that 2 years ago.
Shane has said over and over again, more than just libido and energy, it made him want to get into the gym more. It made him want to get in better shape. And believe me, the Steiners have amazing genetics. His brother is a world champion steer wrestler. His dad, Bobby Steiner, is a famous world champion bull rider. They've got natural genetics. But when you added this to the mix, in Shane's own words, it took him to the next level. Shane noticed the mental clarity, Bobby was able to work out longer and gain muscle mass. He's already completely shredded. I gotta admit, for me, the biggest effect has been libido. Now, I've never claimed to have a body like some beach model, but back when I was 20, 22 years old and worked out every day, I looked great. But over the years, and being married, having 3 kids, and working 18 hours a day, I gained basically 100 pounds. And it's been a long process losing that weight in the last 4 years. But if you look at the photos and the videos of what I looked like 4 or 5 years ago versus today, the results are dramatic. I'd already cleaned up my diet, I was working out hard, but I'd only lost about 20 pounds. It was adding the other key ingredients from InfoWarsLife.com that helped me personally go to the next level and shed another 35 pounds.
This has actually made me feel so good that here lately, about a year ago, I started training jiu-jitsu, and that kind of led to doing some boxing and kickboxing. I mean, it's amazing that 2 years ago, I was on the couch and couldn't even tie my shoes, and now I'm training with MMA fighters and just doing stuff that I never thought that I would be doing ever again. So Super Male Vitality has allowed me to do some amazing things, and if it has those kind of effects for me, I know that it will do great things for you. So just try Super Male Vitality. I promise you, you'll love it.
And finally, let's look at Anthony Gucciardi, InfoWars.com reporter. He also works with Dr. Group and others, helping develop the newest, most cutting-edge, high-quality supplements. Let's take a look at what happened when he tried to barefoot ski for the first time with the Steiners. And remember, we're not making fun of him. He had the will to get in the arena, and he's lost more than 10 pounds in the last few years of fat and gained more than 10 pounds of muscle. And Anthony chalks it up to Super Male Vitality as well. Bottom line, folks, you want to discover the power of Super Male Vitality and Super Female Vitality for yourself by visiting InfoWarsLife.com today or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Again, as we finished up in the last segment, we were talking about how the Democrats in the debate on Saturday lied and misrepresented who was a socialist and what the tax rates were. Again, Bernie Sanders saying, I wouldn't go as high as 90%. I'm not as much of a socialist as Eisenhower. Well, we looked at the rates at the beginning of the Eisenhower administration as well as the Reagan administration and the real socialist in the room, FDR. And the reality is that the rates that you attribute to somebody like Reagan, as O'Malley said, they were 70%. That's what he began with. He ended with the highest rate of 28%. Only 2 brackets, either 15% or 28%, and the median family income was in that lower bracket. So I want to go back and take a look real quickly before we move on. Who is the socialist? Who raised taxes most on the people who had a median family income? Today, again, in today's dollars, $51,900. If we look at FDR, he started in 1933 with a 4% tax rate on the median family home and ended up with a 29% tax rate. Huge tax increase. And understand that FDR also introduced Social Security, incredibly regressive taxes for those of you who want to call yourself progressives. The people who are making less than $100,000 pay all of those taxes, and it's a 15% tax on their cost to the employer. They only see half of it come out of their paycheck. That's the other part of the lies underlying socialism. Now, Eisenhower, he began with a tax on the family, the median family, of 34%, but he ended with a 22% tax rate on that family. Again, taxes went down under Eisenhower. Not a socialist, Bernie, not a socialist, 34% to 22%. Reagan, he began with a 28% tax. That's what he inherited, a 28% tax on the median family income, and he ended up with a 15% tax on the median family income. Cut it in half. There you go. That's the real socialism. Let's take a look, too, at Nicaragua. You know, Bernie Sanders loves the Nicaraguan people. Remember that tape that came out in 1985? I call him Bernie Sandernista because he loved Daniel Ortega so much. Well, it's the Nicaraguans now are telling Cubans that they can't migrate into their country. Not even if they're on their way to America for the pot of gold. No, you can't pass through communist, socialist Nicaragua. They say Nicaragua dispatched its military and its police to help close its border as a dispute with Costa Rica over Cuban migrants fueled tensions between the two nations. They're ready to go to war with Costa Rica because Costa Rica is allowing Cuban migrants to pass through their country and into Nicaragua on their way to America to get the free goodies. Costa Rica decided to grant 7-day transit visas to 1,100 Cuban migrants. And then the Nicaraguans said, that violates our national sovereignty. National sovereignty, imagine that. that antiquated notion. The Nicaraguan government then said that they would use troops and riot police, and they launched tear gas at the people attempting to enter their country on Sunday. The number of Cubans seeking to migrate to the U.S. has spiked since the two countries began working in December of last year to normalize relations after more than 5 decades. 28,000 Cubans have entered the U.S., and they say the Cuban migrants have historically used Central America as a land bridge to the United States. Again, Bernie Sanders, who wants open borders, Bernie Sanders, who thinks that the Nicaraguan Sandinistas, and again, we've talked about how Daniel Ortega was nothing but a kleptocrat thrown out by a coalition of conservatives and communists. He was nothing but a common thief. You want to talk about crony capitalists? You want to understand how real socialism works? Take a look at Nicaragua, the idols of Bernie Sanders. And we should be concerned about what's going on in our open borders. Just look at what ISIS is saying about Europe, bragging about the fact that they now have 4,000 covert ISIS gunmen. Is that an exaggeration? There have been over 5 million migrants brought in, most of them in the age, men in military age in their 20s to mid 30s. If you only had 1/10 of 1%, that would be 5,000 ISIS people, okay? Understand that if you've got 99.9% of the people coming in that are just coming in because they want more money or because they maybe are truly refugees, even if 99.9% of them are okay, that 0.1% would still give you over 5,000 terrorists being let into the country by the open borders of the globalists. And in response to this, even France is saying, well, we need to rethink this. They want a suspension, not a termination, but a suspension of the Schengen open borders. And of course, this is the accord that was reached in the Luxembourg town of Shenzhen, saying that they were going to have no internal borders. And this is essentially the same thing that we have in the United States. You don't have to go through border control if you pass from Texas to Oklahoma. Well, there you don't have to have it within this zone, this internal zone, and that is most of the European states. So you can go from Italy to France and not have to go through customs or border checks as you did before. But the French say, no, we need to crack down on this free movement in and around Europe. They want this shut down, as well as saying that they want to enact some kind of an emergency enactment for the next 3 months. Of course, that's not going to stop the climate change summit that's coming up in 2 weeks. Same thing is happening in America. Some governors are halting the acceptance of Syrian refugees. The AP reports that several U.S. governors are threatening to halt efforts to allow Syrian refugees into their states in the aftermath of the Paris attacks, though an immigration expert says they have no legal authority to do so. Oh, really? Well, where does the president get his legal authority to say that he's not going to enforce any of the immigration laws, that he's not going to patrol the border, that he's not going to deport people who are here illegally? Where does the president get his authority to do that? No, that will be done. It will be done by some of the senators who have a strong will, like by governors, rather, like Texas Governor Abbott. People like Paul Ryan, however, favor legal status for immigrants, the same immigrants that Donald Trump wants to return home. They say House Speaker Paul Ryan said he supports allowing undocumented immigrants, in other words, illegal immigrants, to remain in the U.S. without gaining citizenship, although he doesn't believe in mass deportation. In other words, he wants people to get legal status but not be citizens. You understand, of course, this is absolute and total nonsense. There's no way that somebody who has legal status in the United States is going to be living here, working here, and the Democrats are rightfully going to say, you got taxation without representation. Because the whole purpose, from the Democrat standpoint, the immediate purpose for them is to get more Democrat voters. This will never last. They will call these people disenfranchised, second-class citizens, even though they're not given citizenship status. They will push to move this to the next step. That is simply a beard being put out there by Paul Ryan. Now, on the 14th, the day after these attacks, you had the foreign policy honchos from all these different countries, the United States, from Russia, as well as the head of the EU, meeting in Vienna, talking about how they were going to stop the Syrian war. And of course, they began talking about terrorism at the same time. This agreement that they came up with is total BS. But the statements that they made are very telling as to what is behind this. Now, of course, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry was there, as well as Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Sergei Lavrov said the Paris attacks show that